I know. I'm going to sign this and we'll get that.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the December 2nd, 2019 regular meeting of the Milford Board of Aldermen. Please join me as Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Alderman Beatty,
Madam Secretary, Alderman Beatty would like to be excused.
Alderman Gaynor,
Here.
Alderman Gennatasio,
Here.
Alderman Golden,
Alderman Golden would also like to be excused, Madam Secretary.
Alderman Grant,
Madam Secretary, Alderman Grant would also like to be excused.
Alderman Hardiman, Alderman Harla, Alderman Parente, Alderman Frank Smith,
Here.
Alderman Winthrop Smith, Alderman Sutton, Alderman Tranquilli,
Madam Secretary, Alderman Tranquilli would also like to be excused.
Alderman Vitro,
Here.
Alderman Vitale, Alderman Willis.
Here.
11 present.
We have 11 present. We do have a quorum. The next portion of the meeting is devoted to public comment. Statements are limited to the legislative function of the Board of Aldermen. The time limit granted to each speaker shall be 3 minutes. Residents, taxpayers, and electors may address the board at this time. The board encourages speakers not to express derogatory, insensitive, or offensive statements, or to engage in personal attacks against individuals. In order to allow everyone an opportunity to speak, I ask that everyone please limit their speaking to 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to address the board can do so at this time.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board of Aldermen. I am here tonight to speak as I did earlier, against the ordinances that you're going to have before you in a few minutes that raise certain building, sewer, and other fees here in the city of Milford. Look, a fee increase is a tax increase. All right, you can call it a different name if you want, but raising government revenue through government action and exacting that on the people who come before government is a tax. So you're voting here to raise taxes. These are not adjustments, as we heard certain people call them earlier. There's certainly nothing to be adjusted here. There's nothing going down. Everything's going up. And not by a little bit, but a lot. Up by 33.33%, by 50%. In the sewer thing, by an order of magnitude. And the delegation of authority bothers me as well on these things. Look, this is bad policy for the city of Milford. I heard a lot of talk in the campaign about a renaissance here in the city of Milford. The city of Milford is renowned as a difficult place to do any kind of construction work. The people in the construction industry call it the Milford Premium. We are only adding to the Milford Premium here. We are raising taxes on the very people who are trying to develop our community. It's bad for Milford. It's bad policy. And as I said earlier, it's also bad politics. Many of you ran less than a month ago on having cut taxes back to back to back to back. And it strikes me as the height of cynicism here in your first business meeting after that election to have, as one of your first orders of business, a tax increase. If you wonder why people are cynical about politicians, think about the idea where you ran on, oh, we don't raise taxes, we cut them back to back to back to back, and the first thing you do in the door is you raise taxes. You ran as fiscal conservatives, effectively running as Republicans. Well played, you won. And then now here you're throwing it all away first thing in the door. Some of us fully intend to make sure that the citizens of Milford know that that's what you've done and what you're doing. You must really think not much of the citizens of Milford to be putting this out there not even a month after you ask them to vote for you because you don't increase taxes. And I heard a justification for these things. Oh, other towns do it too. Other towns are doing roughly the same thing. What a bad reason to raise somebody's taxes or fees or adjustments, as you might like to call them. Just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean we should. Raising revenue or taxes should be done because you need to do it. And you can say, oh, it'll defray this expense or that expense. Then don't call it anything other than what it is, a tax increase. And because somebody else is overtaxing their people doesn't mean you should overtax ours. I probably bumped up against my 3 minutes. I appreciate your indulgence here, and I would urge you, both because it's bad policy and bad politics, to either table or not take up or vote down these ordinances. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Alderman John Drapp, 41 Jackson Drive. And I hate to be duplicative of Senator Smith, but I think this is such an important issue that it warrants a little duplicity here. Merriam-Webster, I don't know what edition it is, because of course it's the online version, so I don't even know if they're considered editions anymore. Definition of tax as a noun: a charge usually of money imposed by authority on persons or property for public purpose. So to, I suppose, quote Shakespeare, that a rose of any other name would smell as sweet, let's call it what it is, folks. It's a tax. It's a tax. And the fact is, as Senator Smith alluded to, there are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of you with 2 absent that won an election 27 days ago on a platform of back-to-back tax decreases, which, if I remember correctly, and I may be off a little bit, I think over that 4-year period of time, that amounted to a 0.6% reduction. But now, with this proposed ordinance amendment, we're going to raise the fees for building permits 25%. And if the only justification for that is the fact that other towns are doing it, well, we can't have it both ways, because I do recall reading something in the newspaper that Milford had the lowest mill rate. I think it was in New Haven County. So in that situation, we have no problem distancing ourselves from our surrounding communities. But I guess when it comes to adding to these fees, well, the sine qua non seems to be what other communities are doing. So I would certainly urge you to reject that ordinance, because if this is something other than a revenue grab, I'm going to listen intently to what the justification may be. But if it is truly simply to collect more money, well, that begs the question, why are we reducing taxes in the first place if we're in need of money that we have to raise building permit fees 25%? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Walter Hagedorn, 61 Judith Drive. I just want to put out there that I oppose both ordinances being put forward tonight. Like the people said before, this is a tax. We all know it. It's just wrong, and if your only justification that I saw in the paperwork is that other towns are doing it, we can do better in Milford. Milford deserves better. The people of Milford deserve better, and let's just vote no on this. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to address the board at this time?
Good evening. Richard Smith, 6th Avenue. Good evening, Aldermen, and congratulations on your election. I was honored to be the Master of Ceremonies, as you know, for the 5th time. And one of the things that I mentioned and I take great comfort in is how, as a community, we come together after the election and we work for the collective good. And I've always noted that under Republican or Democratic administrations. And yet what I'm beginning to see here as I look around, I got the Republican talking points. Let me give them to you. A fee is a tax. And you ran on back-to-back tax cuts, and now you're passing a tax. First of all, there are some fees going down. I don't know if they're opposed to the ones going down. Opposed to the ones going down? How about the ones being eliminated? What you see here talk about former Senator Smith's political cynicism is the fact that this administration won by probably the largest margin in city history. Why? Because they're doing a good job. And I guess the playbook now is to come out and nip at our heels, or nip at the Democrats' heels. I've not seen former Senator Smith at a Board of Aldermen meeting 12 years or more, maybe. Not when the Republican administration was passing 7% tax increases on property tax. No worry about taxes then. So what I want the people of Milford to know is what they're seeing, and if you don't, you can hear it from the repeated talking points, is they got together and they said, we gotta start beating these guys up. This was a realignment of fees. Some have gone down, some have gone up, and some have been eliminated. And unless you understand those fees beyond creating talking points, you should probably stay seated and let the administration go on to do what it's done so well over the last 8 years, and that is manage this city. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the board can do so at this time. Seeing none, Alderman Sutton, agenda item number 3, consideration of minutes for the regular meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen held on November 7, 2019.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself because I wasn't at that meeting from voting on this.
Thank you, Alderman Willis. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously with one abstention. Alderman Sutton, agenda item number 4, consideration of minutes for the special organizational meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of the special organizational meeting held on Tuesday, November 19, 2019.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'd like to
Chairman?
point out one thing myself. I noticed on the minutes that Alderman Harla, according to the minutes, was present, and he wasn't. That correction which needs to be taken care of. Other than that, is there any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Smith.
Mr. Chairman, through you, item 3 on the minutes of the special organizational meeting that was held on November 19, 2019, that discusses an amendment that I had raised to this board with respect to Section 13 of the rules of the Board of Aldermen. And essentially that rule is called suspension of the rules. And what that effectively does is it says that this board can suspend the rules that govern this board with a mere majority vote. And my amendment, as you can see in the minutes, was to change that to a 2/3 vote rather than a mere majority. And I had, when it was at committee level, it seemed to make sense as an amendment. And yet, when it was brought to the full board, it was voted down. Now, Alderman Frank Smith had indicated that the Rules Committee should reconvene at a later date so that we can discuss it, we could bring it back, put it on the agenda, bring it to the full board, and then we can have further discussion on it. And I had, after the organizational meeting, reached out to the members of the Rules Committee, and yet they were unavailable to meet. So, over the course of the next 13 days, I did, in fact, send out 5 emails to the members of the Rules Committee, and I received 2 responses. One was that alderman could not make it, and the second response was yesterday, and it was told to me that I was not the chairman of the Rules Committee to propose dates for the Rules Committee to meet. So, Mr. Chairman, you had given a good speech about bipartisan effort on getting things done when we unanimously elected you as chairman of the board. And what the special organizational meeting left, at least in my opinion, I feel as though those words weren't taken into consideration, the words that you gave when you gave that speech. And through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering, and through you to Alderman Hardeman, who is in fact the chairman of the Rules Committee, if Alderman Hardeman in fact does have a date, and if he has brought that date to this Board of Aldermen so that the Rules Committee can reconvene, discuss that proposed amendment, discuss other items that were brought up by other aldermen at the Rules Committee meeting, that were great suggestions for changes to the rules. And through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if that date is available.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, while I think this is a good item of discussion, this is not the proper place. The only items that can be discussed is whether there is a change in the wording of the minutes of that organizational meeting. This is not anything other than if there is an error in the transcription of those minutes or an error by the clerk of this board, an opportunity for an adjustment to correct those errors only. This cannot be to go back and forth in terms of the discussion. There are other opportunities for that. This particular item, in terms of proper procedure, is specifically for corrections to the minutes and nothing else.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, You had asked for a discussion. Is there any further discussion as to the minutes of the special organizational meeting? I do have further discussion on that, and I just laid that out for you, Mr. Chairman. And through you, I am still wondering whether or not Alderman Hardiman does in fact have that date for the Rules Committee to reconvene.
Before the mayor spoke, I was going to ask you what correction you wanted to make in the minutes that were made. And that's what I was waiting patiently to hear you, what correction you might have had. So far, if I haven't heard of any correction, more or less a discussion of how that committee wanted to change the rules.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is because you asked for discussion, not for changes or corrections to the minutes. So I did have a discussion item that I did want to bring up to the board.
Okay. Alderman Sutton.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Winthrop Smith. The motion on the floor was for the approval of the minutes. Was your comment in favor or in opposition to the motion to approve the minutes?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we haven't taken up a vote on that yet. It was asked whether there's further discussion, and that's the item I brought up. Thank you.
Is there any other further discussion? Alderman Hardiman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I never got your email to ask for dates. I was not here in this state. I am back. We will sit down and discuss it. Okay?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that, Alderman Hardiman. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hardiman. So all in favor of the minutes? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Close under Rule 4 under Chairman's report. I'd like to take this time to thank our Finance Director once again for the fantastic job he's doing with our finances. We achieved a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting by the Government Financial Officers Association. I just wanted to commend him at this time. I just thank you very, very much. Appreciate you keeping the city of Milford's finances up to snuff. Other than that, I want to welcome all our new members of the board, our newly elected aldermen.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I just want to briefly say that was very kind of all of you, and I appreciate it. I'd also like to thank all the members of the Finance Department, in particular, Ariane Swift, our city accountant, and our junior accountant, Vernell Bethel, for their significant contributions as well that helped us get this award. So I'd like to thank them and all the members of the Finance Department as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. They're well-deserved. Once again, I'd like to welcome all the new aldermen on both sides. I hope this will be a very productive 2 years that we have ahead of us, and I hope to keep these meetings very respectful, both to the mayor and myself and each other moving forward. Thank you very much. Open under agenda item number 6, Mayor's report and recommendations. Is there a report, Mr. Mayor?
Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I hope everyone had a terrific Thanksgiving holiday. Hopefully you celebrated it in style with family and friends, and that it was a relaxing holiday for everybody. Everybody is recharged as we start the first regular meeting of the 2019-2020 Board of Aldermen session. I look forward to working with all of you to make Milford an even better place to live, to do business. I also want to give kudos to our finance director and our finance department for their good work and hard work that they do each and every day, as recognized by the GFOA in their Excellence Award. And I respectfully request your consideration and action on those items listed in the agenda. The only item that I presented was item 8A, but I would respectfully request your action on that item. I think it's a good one for the city of Milford, something that will allow us to celebrate. And with that, if you have any questions during the pendency of this meeting, I am happy to answer those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, we'll open under agenda number 7. There is no unfinished business. Moving on to agenda number 8, moving on to new business. Alderman Sutton, agenda item number 8A.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the requested attached resolution establishing Milford Suffrage Centennial Committee.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, this was the item that I was referring to. As you know, 2020 signifies 100 years of women's rights to vote. And a concept to celebrate it properly came from our Board of Education member, Cindy Wolf-Boyen, and our city clerk, Karen Fortunati. I'd ask if they could stand behind the podium and give a brief presentation about this very cool initiative that's similar to what we did to celebrate Milford's 375th anniversary. We drafted a similar resolution establishing a committee for Milford's 375th anniversary, and this is something that we're going to celebrate in similar style. So basically the concept is that we're going to have a committee. It's going to have a broad contingency of all of Milford's stakeholders, all of the community's stakeholders. So if anyone knows folks that would be good committee members, certainly inform Cindy or Karen or myself, and we're happy to get them engaged in some of the activities, some of the educational opportunities that this committee is going to be involved in over the course of the next year as we celebrate 100 years.
Do you want to read the resolution? Sure. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you so much for taking the time to consider this. I was just speaking with Alderman Giannatasio, and think it would be a good idea for this resolution to be read into the record. So with your permission, I'd like to do that. So this is the resolution establishing a Milford Suffrage Centennial Committee. Whereas 2020 marks the 100th anniversary of ratification of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution ensuring women's right to vote, and whereas from 1878, when the Women's Suffrage Amendment was first introduced in the United States Senate, until its final ratification 42 years later, Milford played an active role in advocating and fighting for women's equal rights. And whereas through the dedication and determination of Milford residents who partnered with suffrage activists throughout the state and nation, the ability of women to participate in our democracy was fundamentally and forever changed. And whereas, like the state of Connecticut, which has already established a statewide suffrage centennial committee, the Milford community also recognizes that this special 100th anniversary offers the small city with a big heart an opportunity to honor the efforts of residents who have championed women's suffrage and advanced the role of women in our democracy. And whereas celebrating the women's suffrage movement and the role of Milford residents have played reinforces our core beliefs in our democratic republic, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of Milford as follows. 1, there is hereby established a Milford Suffrage Centennial Committee. The mayor is hereby authorized to appoint as many members as he deems necessary. And 2, the Milford Suffrage Centennial Committee is hereby charged with the following duties. A, plan and assist with the development of centennial events and projects throughout 2020, which celebrate and commemorate Milford's role in the passage and ratification of the 19th Amendment. And B, promote civic responsibility, including the importance of voting in all elections. So I'm going to turn it over to Cindy, but I would like to point out that we are especially lucky to have Cindy Wolf-Boynton leading this effort. She's becoming an expert, becoming widely recognized as an expert here in Connecticut on the suffrage movement. She's writing a book that's going to be published next year. She's also the president of the Connecticut chapter of NOW. So we have some great things in store. I'm going to let her fill the board in on what we hope is going to happen in 2020 to celebrate this historic event.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen, and thank you all for your consideration tonight. So I'm also a member of the statewide Centennial Commission. And one of the things that I think is very exciting about that statewide commission is that it's really given members of the statewide community, different organizations, different agencies, the opportunity to really take charge, take ownership of the celebration, and have various events throughout the state. One of the things that the Secretary of State has charged all municipalities with is coming up with their own centennial committees to be able to tell those homegrown stories about the people in each municipality who are involved in the suffrage effort, and use it as an opportunity not just to celebrate the history of our different cities, but also to encourage the activism, the political awareness, the importance of voting to our young people today. At every level, both within the federal government, here in Connecticut at the state level, and here what we're proposing here in Milford, this is meant to be a very bipartisan effort. So we are looking to get all people in our community involved, regardless of what their politics are. We are looking to get all organizations involved in this effort. We are hoping to have events that will take place during each of the next 12 months, starting in January 2020, and using it as an opportunity not just to talk about history, not just to show our young people what people who lived in their town did to make a difference in the world and how they can make a difference too, but to really harness both the celebration and the upcoming 2020 election to get more people than ever registered in the city of Milford before, to take advantage of those rights that were so hard won 100 years ago. And we would be happy to answer any questions you might have. No questions? Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Alderman Ferrenti.
Through you, Chairman, I just wanted to thank Cindy and our city clerk for championing this, and I think it's important for all of us to know that this flowed from federal bipartisan legislation, and I'm glad we're embracing it here in Milford as well. I think it gives us a great opportunity for our young men and women to really be educated about gender equity, particularly when it comes to voting, and to have thoughtful dialogue for all of us around the issues for those for whom voting wasn't so accessible. So thank you so much for doing that for us.
Thank you, Alderman Parenti. Moving on to agenda, Alderman Frank Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did just want to speak briefly on this because I was very gratified to hear that the city of Milford is going to have an involvement at the state level and the federal level as we come up to 2020, which is indeed the centennial of the first presidential election in which we had universal suffrage in this country. It seems almost medieval when you think that half of adult Americans within living memory were denied the franchise. In 1920, after the 19th Amendment had been ratified, the American people went out and elected Warren Harding. So I wouldn't pander to say that because women now have the vote, they necessarily make better decisions. But I think it's very important that this particular event, this particular centennial, is of particular significance because when you think about it, it did bring in half of the adult population into the voting booth and into the area of government and public discourse. And at the risk of being partisan on this, nothing would give me greater satisfaction than to see a woman win the presidency of this country in the year 2020. I think it would be a very fitting and appropriate commemoration of that event. And the city of Milford is like every major industrial country, has had a woman chief executive or a leader all throughout Europe. Even in Muslim countries, they've had women presidents. We have a long tradition of great women in the city offices of Milford, including former Mayor Alberta Jago, Margaret Egan, the longtime city clerk, Joanne Roerig, and Linda Stock, and now Karen Fortunati, our new city clerk, and various members, including speakers of this body. So I applaud the resolution that will bring this Centennial Commission before the city, the people of the city of Milford, and I look forward to their efforts in commemorating this very important anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Open under agenda number 8, under 9, I'm sorry. There is no new business. We're open under agenda number 10. There is no budget memo transfers. Agenda number 11, moving on to refunds. Alderman Sutton, agenda item number 11A.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the refunds in the amount of $24,196.16.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 12, reports of standing committees. Alderman Frank Smith, agenda item 12A, report of Ordinance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Ordinance Committee met earlier this evening and to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 6, Buildings and Building Regulations, Article 1, in general, demolition, Section 6-1 of the City of Milford Code of Ordinances, permit fees. The committee met and unanimously has recommended the ordinance for consideration by the full board. I'd like to present that as a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Who raised their hand? Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, thank you for your consideration of this proposed ordinance revision. As was discussed to some degree during the public session, this is a change. This was a change that was brought forward to me by our DPLU director, Joe Griffith. He is in the audience this evening, available to answer questions that you may have. He mentioned to me that this is a particular ordinance that had not been adjusted in almost 2 decades. It had not been adjusted since July 1st of 2002, so 18 years ago approximately. And from time to time, over the course of at least every couple decades, it is appropriate, it is good government to review what you have enacted. One of the things as mayor that I am most proud of is the change, the 180-degree change in the building department. There was some comments about how the Milford Building Department did have a terrible reputation, quite frankly, 9, 10 years ago, not just locally here in Milford with contractors, but regionally, even in the state. That has been one of my proudest sea changes for the city of Milford. Joe Griffith has done yeoman service, bringing that building department from worst to first. Milford now has really recognized statewide as one of the best places to build by contractors, by folks that want to improve our public and private local infrastructure. It has become a building process that has gotten a whole heck of a lot more consistent, more customer friendly. Folks come to me out of the woodwork, and again, on my desk, being mayor, there's always a complaint pile and a compliment pile, and no matter what mayor or first selectman you are, the complaint pile is always higher than the compliment pile. In fact, when I first started 8 years ago as mayor, 9 out of every 10 complaints that my office would receive involved the building office. Folks were upset with the duration of time that it took to process building permits, the customer service, the consistency. I can't tell you the last time we received a complaint. They happened just because of the nature, but I can count them on my nose, the number of complaints that I've received in the last 4 years, certainly. We have now the second busiest building department by permit in the state of Connecticut. As you know, we've had a huge increase of new businesses coming into town, existing businesses expanding. We've, the last several years, have had well over $100 million in construction built out in the city of Milford. That is unlike any other town or city in the state of Connecticut. Because of that, we took a look at the ordinance that was passed, again, almost 2 decades ago, and looked at what surrounding municipalities had and made some adjustments. We realigned our ordinance, and the proposal is before you this evening. Some fees increased, some fees stayed the same, some fees decreased, and some fees, like the reinspection fee for $15, was eliminated in its entirety. Again, our building official, our DPLU director, Joe Griffith, did a lot of research, not just with surrounding municipalities, but with the folks that actually file the applications, with the local contractors of what is most appropriate. He did then gauge what other municipalities have, and he gave you a printout that should appear in your agenda of all the surrounding municipalities, as well as similarly situated municipalities, municipalities that are approximately the size of Milford. And even with these adjustments, again, there are adjustments upward, adjustments downward, adjustments that wipe out a fee entirely, and there are things that just stay the same. Milford is far and away the lowest of any of the surrounding municipalities in terms of fees that it charges. I think that is something that we want to continue with, because that helps to encourage new business growth, businesses to expand within our municipality. But he put a lot of thought, a lot of research into what the customers wanted, things that just didn't make sense, or ways to make it more sense. And again, what good government is to take a look at things that have been stale for the last 2 decades and provide updates. And that is what's before you tonight. I think that if you have questions about specifics, he is our local resident expert. Please lean on his experience. Please lean on his day-to-day know-how. But if you have questions, I'm certainly happy to answer those, as is our city attorney.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Sutton.
I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Griffith. Mr. Griffith, I was reviewing the materials provided to us in our packet that contains the schedule of new fees, and it appears, and please confirm for me, that from 2002 to the present, the base permitting fees for 1 and 2 family residential, whether they're additions or new construction, they were $15 for the first $1,000 in each degradation thereof.
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
And the requested increase is from $15 to $20 for the first 1,000.
For the first 1,000 of construction costs, that's correct.
And then for residential, it's going up from $12 to $15, correct? For the residential?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And commercial, the next level goes from 12 to 18, correct?
For the next
For
1,000,
commercial,
correct. Yes.
for the next level over the first $1,000
Correct,
of
yes.
the value. Okay. And it appears that for everything over $5 million, that price is staying the same of $6, correct?
We'd continue with the $6 per
Okay. So
1,000 over
that
5
will not be
million, yes.
raised. And it's also my understanding that the fee for the permit for outdoor assemblies such as carnivals, exhibits, and reviewing stands will stay the same at $50, correct?
That's correct.
And we've also been provided with the information and fee schedules for surrounding towns, as the mayor said, and similarly situated towns. Based on what we have from everywhere from New Haven, West Haven, Orange, all the way to Glastonbury, it appears that we will still be, if not the lowest, but looks like the second or third lowest of all of these cities in Connecticut. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Griffin.
Alderman Frank Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Sutton asked Director Griffin the questions I was going to ask, but I did want to point out, because there was some discussion here at the Ordinance Committee and subsequently during the public hearing section, that we're trying to conflate the idea of building permit fees as a tax. And I opened the Ordinance Committee discussion with an acknowledgement that indeed our mayor and members of this board on both parties have always been very averse to additional charges particularly on Milford taxpayers, whether it be parking or permitting of various kinds. I think it's important to note that perhaps the fiscal strength of this city is the good judgment we have in making decisions like this. And as Mr. Griffin's pointed out, and as the mayor's pointed out, this is almost 20 years, and we do make these adjustments, and they are adjustments, because as the mayor pointed out, some of these fees have, in fact, one of us been eliminated, one has gone down. Those adjustments, or if you want to call them taxes, additional fees, but really what they do is help to offset costs that are undertaken by the land use office and the building office of this city, and avoid taxes. I would say in many ways what it does is defray the costs associated with the administration of these things, and Milford is a very popular destination for a lot of builders and people doing additions to their homes. So it's always something of great benefit to the city in terms of the tax base. But I would say these adjustments really help to in many ways, keep us from applying taxes across the board over the entire tax-paying population of Milford. And I'm grateful that Director Griffin and the mayor and others here in the city have taken the time to research this. I think comparison to other cities is not irrelevant, and it is not a lowest common denominator. I think it's an important thing to recognize, because cities of equal size, we should be on parity with them in terms of what revenues we're able to bring into the city. So I applaud this initiative. I thank you, Joe, and the people in your office for all you do. and I would be in support of the amendment on this particular ordinance. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Smith.
Good evening, Director Griffith. I appreciate you coming down tonight and fielding all of our questions. And just for general information, just because I don't know, how long have you actually been director of the Land Use Office for?
Since 2013, so 6 years.
Okay, great, thank you. And Director Griffith, I just have a couple questions. Is there anything that you or your office was not able to do last year that you otherwise would have been able to do if these fees were increased?
No, not at all. The services we provide are independent of the fees that are assessed. And we've strived and will continue to strive to improve that service regardless of this.
Thank you. And is there anything that you will be able to do in furtherance of what you've already done over the past 6 years now that these fees are being increased?
As I said, no. We do whatever we're able to do to provide better service to our customers in terms of prompt inspections when they're requested, in terms of accurately and thoroughly reviewing plans, making sure that when we issue certificates of occupancy, we've complied with the state law. And again, there's some variables in doing that, but we will continue to do better.
Thank you. And Director Griffith, if this ordinance does in fact pass tonight, or if this fee increase does pass tonight, in your opinion, would it be reasonable to potentially increase these fees in the future? However many years the future means, would it be reasonable to increase them in the future as compared to other towns, if need be?
No, not necessarily, but again, the basis of this increase is comparing to other towns. So what we're trying to do is stay in line, competitive with the area towns.
So then it would be reasonable to increase the fees in the future?
Not necessarily. Again, the fees, the revenue generated are going to increase with the cost of construction. That's the basis of our assessing the overall fees. The fee structure, the $12 per thousand versus $15 per thousand, is really just a scale that we're comparing to other towns.
I appreciate that. It sounds like you've been able to efficiently and effectively run your department. Thank you.
Alderman Gaynor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Where do the fees go that are collected? Where are they? Obviously, your department is independent on the fees collected to manage and run your day-to-day business. Where are the fees actually?
They're deposited to the, I'm sorry, I interrupted. They're deposited upstairs to finance and go into the general fund.
Thank you.
Alderman Giannattasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. Good evening, Mr. Griffith.
Good evening.
My question is, the fees, can you share with the members of the board what the total fees that you collected, what the total amount was last year? Would you happen to have that information with you tonight?
It's approximately $1.2 million.
So with this anticipated increase, what would the expectation be based on the volume of work that we did last year? How would those fees increase? By how much?
Please understand the variables that we're working with here. So you've got the number of permit applications that are coming in, and more importantly, the size of each permit's value of construction. So there's a lot of variables there, and so we're trying to be conservative, but we would anticipate it's probably about $200,000 more that we would be seeing in increased revenues.
That would be going into the general fund. And is it fair to say a portion of these fees come from outside contractors, out-of-town contractors, out-of-state contractors that do business in Milford?
Yeah, a major portion of those fees do come from out-of-city contractors.
When you say a major portion, can you just maybe...
I'm referring to the commercial permits. So typically, whereas the number of permits that we're handling on a year-to-year basis are primarily residential and primarily residential alterations and additions, they represent probably about a third of the overall revenue that we're getting. The other 2/3 are the commercial projects.
So through your tenure of 6 years,
Yes.
This is the first time that you've actually focused on these fees, or what prompted you to look at the fees?
Just the fact that as we look at other towns, and I receive comments from both out-of-town contractors asking what the permit fee structure is, as well as out-of-state contractors, and they always, if nothing else, raise their eyebrows at our fee structure, i.e. it's a good value to them.
So people have actually expressed the fact that the fees are much cheaper here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Good evening, Joe. Thank you for all the research that you did. A couple of questions.
Yes.
Is there any correlation between lower fees and increased permits?
I'm sorry?
Is there a correlation, in your opinion, for lower fees to more permits?
No, I don't. No, I don't. So in other words, do keeping our building permit fees low encourage construction? No, I don't believe so.
So there's no correlation there at all? Okay.
I don't believe so.
Okay. You also indicated the fact that there's a lot of out-of-town construction people coming in for fees. Do you know, can you break it down as to how many out-of-towners, how many people from in-town, and how many private residents or homeowners apply for a permit? You have those numbers?
Bear with me, please.
Sure.
So I guess to try to answer your question, knowing that it's probably a function of 4/5 to 1/5. 80% of our building permits are issued in a residential category, and so those residences, obviously, they're Milford residents, so those would be in town. Now, whether they're hiring out-of-town contractors, what have you, but 80% of the number of fees that we're cutting are, the number of permits that we're cutting are going directly into homeowners, either through residential alterations or new construction. The number of commercial permits, new commercial buildings and commercial alterations is significantly lower, probably represent about 20% of the number of permits, not to be confused with the value of the fees or the value of the permits.
Right. I would probably be looking at the idea of homeowners putting an addition on, increasing the footprint. They hire a construction company. Do most of them take out the permit themselves, or do they allow, because they don't want to go through the rigmarole or whatever the process is, do they have the building or the construction company take out the permits? And if that's true, do we have any idea of outside construction companies coming into Milford getting permits?
No, I wouldn't have. I mean,
keep those
we
records.
have that data available, buried in our database somewhere, but
So we don't dig
I don't
down
have
into the
those
weeds
numbers.
that way, as far as how many outside, how many people, how many construction companies are Milford-based, and how many homeowners take out their permits specifically?
Specifically, we do, and this is a recent policy that we've initiated, that the building code and the state allow a homeowner to take out their own permits. And so when a homeowner comes in and says, do I have to send my general contractor in to take out a permit? No, the homeowner can take out
But we
their
don't know
own
how many,
permits.
out of the permits, how many do that? How many people do that, do we?
No, again, we could
All right,
probably determine that, but it would be.
So the point would be that, isn't it true that if a person increases their footprint, increases the value of the home, and does whatever remodeling to improve the status of the home, it effectuates the idea of increased taxes. So they will be taxed at a greater level, or they would be paying higher taxes in the city. It goes without saying.
I believe that's the case,
Okay.
yeah.
The other thing, in the annual report offered by the mayor for 2018, 2019, under the under the heading Building Inspection Division, the Building Inspection Division issued more than 3,600 permits with a construction value of over $105 million and performed over 6,600 inspections. The division also collected, as you stated before, over $1.2 million in fee revenue. That all goes back into the general fund, as you indicated, I believe, before. And I think you also said that the fact that the increase in fees has nothing to do with the improvement of the department. You will still continue to provide services for the citizens of Milford that you have been and increased with success over the last few years that you've been head of the department.
Yes.
Is that true?
We'll continue to strive to.
So then, logically, without keeping up with the Joneses, can you elaborate on why we were increasing fees?
As we said, we looked at area towns, neighboring towns, and on the comparison chart that I believe was handed out.
So we're trying to keep up with the Joneses as far as making money in neighboring towns, because we're not going to, a person's not going to suspend a permit for $5 or $20 or whatever it may be, and they're going to not get somebody from out of town to construct their remodeling. They may want to stay within the confines of Milford. So I'm saying with the $1.2 million of revenue under the old fee structure, do you have any idea in what the revenues would be under the new fee structure?
As I said, I think with knowing all the variables involved, the number of permits, the value of construction, what have you, as I said, I believe it's going to be about $200,000 per year.
200,000 more?
In fees, yes.
On top of the 1.2 million?
Correct.
Okay, so that is not very, in the scheme of things, that's not very significant. A couple $100,000?
Yes, it is.
It is in your department?
Again, from the standpoint of the fees that we collect, it would obviously.
Okay, so the taxes have been held to a very minimum over the years. I'm just wondering out loud, rhetorically, I guess, is the fee structure going to the general fund being able to support keeping taxes at a minimum and not having raised taxes in the past? So I wonder what the genesis of the pay structure really is. If we can improve and expedite more efficiently in your department by increasing these fees, I have no problem with that. I don't know if I have a problem with the fee structure at all, and the idea whether it's a tax or not, which was debated before, in the 17,000 households, is everybody getting a fee attached to it? So therefore, I would think that would be a tax. The fee scheduling, as readjusting the fee scheduling, but I'm just wondering within the structure of the fee scheduling itself as to whether it's worth it. A couple $100,000 in a $100 and whatever the budget is for the city, $110-20 million budget, and to go through an increase in fees, is that something that the household or that individual can obviously manage? If it would be discouraging, would it be some kind of deterrent that these people wouldn't be going forward with construction, minor construction, improvement of the homes? Do you have a thought on that piece, or?
I'm sorry.
May I repeat that question?
Yeah, please.
The fee structure, would that have to be a deterrent on anybody taking out permits for increasing the home structure, the structure of the home, or the facility, whatever they they're taking out the fees for, or the permits for?
No, typically the fee structure at whatever rate, $12 or $15, what have you, is not the, and again, this is per $1,000 of construction costs, it is not a deterrent or a determinant in terms of whether to go or not go with a construction project.
Right. And, you know, my concern is that it's going back into the general fund. It's not going to your department to increase your inspectors to do a better job or to get more out of your department. It's going into the general fund so that it can offset what has been, you know, deemed as holding taxes at a level for every household in the city. So it's almost back-charged as to, you know, running. And we got political at the very beginning of this, which is a wow moment, as the R's and the D's here, and versus the D's. But you know, as the chairman had indicated before, we'd like to run this. Hopefully, have this Board of Aldermen think for the best interests of the people in Milford. So I would just only hope that this is not one of those underpinning moments that, you know, we're paying for what we should have done and maybe could have done in raising taxes a little bit rather than holding them at a level they were for the last 4 years. So, so thank you for all the work you've done, and thank you for the job you're doing in your department.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Giannattasio.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Griffith. So we heard a lot of conversation here tonight in regards to the fees schedule increase. You said the majority of the fees are paid through commercial.
That's correct.
You said a major part of them are also paid by people that are coming in from out of town or out of state.
Yes.
So that leads me to believe...
I'm sorry, of those commercial fees, yes.
Right. So that leads me to believe that really the Milford resident that is going to come to your department and pull out a permit for something very, you know, an addition or something like that is really on the low end of your transactions. It's typically bigger jobs, out-of-state people, so that would be the minority of what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, would be the homeowner?
Let me clarify, because as I said, the homeowners, the residential construction, the alterations of single-family residences represent a good 80% of the number of permits that are coming in. It's just that each one of those permits are representing a much smaller amount of construction, and obviously much lesser in terms of the overall fees.
A small dollar amount?
Correct.
Okay. And I would assume that most of those jobs are financed anyways through home equity loans or mortgages and things like that. So I just wanted to make that point as well. But I do appreciate your taking the time to answer our questions. Thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Sutton.
I'd just like to add one comment, and it's not directed to Director Griffith. In discussing these new fees and how they would change and how they would affect homeowners, local contractors, I spoke with a local contractor who was very pleased to see that the reinspection fee, after an inspector came out, found something that wasn't quite up to snuff or up to code, had to be repaired, and then would have to be reinspected. If the inspector found other things after that, that would incur this further $15 fee. And it was expressed that that perhaps was a bit of a annoyance and a bit of a delay in completing jobs. And I commend the decision to completely eliminate that reinspection fee on this schedule.
Any more discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call a 5-minute recess, please.
5-minute recess. Will the aldermen please take their seats? Thank you. Was there any more discussion on the motion? I'd like to make a comment, Mr. Griffith. You can sit where you are right here. I'm just going to throw it across the room. For one thing, I am a local licensed contractor, professional contractor, and I have two sons that are also professional licensed contractors. And they've worked all over the state of Connecticut. I don't do that anymore. I get a little spoiled, so I'm working just on southern Connecticut. But regardless, every town that I've been in, I was one of the complainers that the mayor spoke of earlier. I had a lot of complaints because I was doing a lot of work here in Milford. But since you've taken over, I just have to say this, it's just been a 100% turnaround. That fee that Alderman Sutton spoke about is one of the things that really got a lot of my fellow contractors annoyed, because not only is it's not the $15 so much, it's the fact that you have to call for another inspection, and that takes time, and the job gets delayed. So the fees have never altered my opinion of still staying to be contracting, nor that it did my sons, and they'll tell you themselves that throughout the state of Connecticut, our fees are much more reasonable than some of the towns. So I just appreciate everything that you've done with the building department in general. Is there any more discussion on the motion? With that, we'll have all in favor? All in favor? Oh, yes, Alderman Harlow.
So I just wanted to add one more thing.
Sure.
Through you to Director Griffiths, since 2015, and during my tenure at the Economic Development Commission, Joe spent each quarter visiting our commission, filling us in on the improvements that have gone on over the years since he took over, and really filled us in as an Economic Development Commission focused on bringing new business into the community. And we saw a very, very steady increase in people's reactions and contractors' reactions to the favored responses they were getting from the building department as time went on. So to Director Griffith's leadership in that department, he's doing a terrific job. And to this point, what we have with the numbers in front of us, to reiterate what we've talked about a few times tonight so far, when we look at the numbers and we look at the communities around us, we're still in line, in some cases lower than some of the communities, even with the increase that we have. So I think it's a very, very reasonable ask of the department to the city to go ahead and approve these numbers.
Thank you, Alderman Harlow. So with no more discussion, all those in favor of the motion? Aye. All those opposed? Roll call vote, Madam Secretary, please.
Alderman Gaynor?
No.
Alderman Giannatasio?
No.
Alderman Hardiman? Yes. Alderman Harla? Yes. Alderman Parente? Alderman Smith? No. I'm sorry, Frank Smith. Alderman Frank Smith.
Yes.
Alderman Wynn Smith? No. Alderman Sutton? Yes. Alderman Vitro?
Yes.
Alderman Vitale? No. Alderman Willis? Yes. So that is... So we have 4 noes and 7 yeses. Passes.
Repeat the number there again.
7 yeses, 4 noes.
7 yes and 4 noes. The motion passes. Alderman Frank Smith, agenda item number 12B.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Ordinance Committee met earlier this evening to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 23, Water, Sewers, and Sewage Disposal, Article 2, Sewers and Sewage Disposal, Division 1, generally Sections 23-23 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Milford, disposal method. This proposed amendment to the ordinance was unanimously recommended to the full board, and I'd like to present it to this board, Mr. Chairman, as a motion.
Can I have a second? Made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Frank Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think when we were discussing this in the Ordinance Committee, I emphasized some of the organizational and language corrections to the original motion, but here too was like the previous ordinance amendment, we are changing the rate on the city fees regarding solid and liquid waste on the rates per coupon, of which loads of 1,000 gallons should require a coupon, adjusting that rate from $40 to $80. So it is it is something else that's bringing into parity what is charged. And discussing this briefly for the meeting with the Public Works Director, he informed me of the huge cost associated with and the complexity sometimes of dealing with the solid waste. This is really only with regard to septic systems, obviously not the city sewer system. I think that I wanted to point that out because, like all of these things, this is an amendment that brings up to date, which we do in many instances, and this too appears to be something that's extremely expensive for the city to administer and to conduct the testing and so forth on the and disposal of this waste. And it is something that does need to be fee structured rather than applying it as part of the overall cost to the city. I just think it's important to mention that, and if there's any other questions, I know Director Saley is available to answer the questions.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Is there any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Could Director Saley take the podium, please? Good evening. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Good evening, everyone.
You ready to eat more turkey? Chris, can you just help me understand, is this more commercial than private?
It's for anyone that has a septic tank, predominantly North Milford, but there's people on the south side of Milford that also have septic tanks.
Do we know what the population is of septic tanks in the city?
I would know that answer.
So what I'm saying, is there a good number of them and a lot of septic systems still in existence?
Well, most of North Milford is on septic. So
most of what?
Most of North Milford is on septics.
Okay, so in order in A, B, C, and D, or A and B, the fee from $5 to $50, $40 to $80. How did you arrive at these numbers? Or did you, or what?
The superintendent looked at it. Just to give you a little background, typically if you're on on city sewer, you pay a yearly fee, which is in the $300 range. Septic tanks predominantly need to be pumped out every 3 to 5 years, depending on use. A bigger family more, but a smaller family less. And the typical septic tank is 1,500 gallons. Now the hauler is the one that's providing the fee for $50. So that's one fee. He buys it once a year. The other fee associated with it is the actual liquid that's coming. And it is a fee. It's directly associated with the cost to process a very concentrated liquid that has sometimes an adverse effect on our processing mechanisms at the treatment plants at Housatonic. So it's directly correlated to the process or the liquid that's coming in. It's still a great value because if you do it, just say it's $160, and you do it every 3 years, as opposed to a resident that's on the sewer, on city sewers is paying close to $1,000 for that same benefit.
The fee structure isn't maybe $35? I mean, the $50 was arrived at for...
They looked at surrounding towns and where other fees were, and that we wanted to be on par with those towns.
Okay, so it's simply keeping up with the Joneses and not having anything to do with the department?
No, I think I shared it. It did have something to do with the department. To process this very concentrated liquid is not an inexpensive process. So it's actually, and I explained, if you were on city sewers, you would pay substantially more than what you're paying to have your septic tank.
Right, I understand that, but the $5 fee was instituted how long ago?
I believe it was over 60 years ago, but I don't know the exact date. Yeah, it hasn't been changed. It's in the city.
6-0?
Yes.
So nobody in the 60 years had enough knowledge to say, hey, we're not charging enough, and we're charging in making that fee $45 more come 2020.
They were probably afraid because the last ordinance went crazy too, so maybe they were afraid to bring it up in front of everybody.
But again, it was never brought up in the 20 years, so nobody really looked at that and said it was too inexpensive and it was costing us more,
I think that what the mayor does is the mayor asks the department heads to look at every line item that we go through budgetary-wise and says, hey, where are we doing it well, where are we doing it poorly, where are we way below the standard, where can we be more beneficial to the city? And I think that's one of the issues. And
So that question just came up by the mayor this year, last year?
No.
Not 5 years ago?
Alderman Vitale, you're putting words in my mouth. That's not what I said.
I'm not putting words in your mouth.
Yes, you are. Okay, what I said is the mayor has asked us as departments to see where we can be efficient and where we can run a more efficient department. And these are some of the issues that we want people, if you have a benefit that you're receiving, we want you to pay your fair share for that benefit. That's all we're trying to do in this.
Question is, in 60 years, why wasn't it looked at? That's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So, to come up this year with a $45 increase in one issue and $40 in another, it might be hardcore on that individual who has that cesspool or whatever, septic tank system.
But I think I answered that. If you were on city sewers...
You did.
You would be paying substantially more than the fee that we're talking about right now.
Thank you.
Alderman Winsmith.
Thank you, Director Selly. You just testified to the fact that Mayor Blake went to each department and asked them to see what they're doing right or what they're doing wrong. Was the purpose of that to try and see where the city could potentially raise more revenue for the general fund by looking at a town comparison and saying, okay, well, this town is $50 for the permit, such as is in sub A here, or what's in sub B. Is that what was going on?
No, so I would like to, the way you asked the question is kind of leading. What the mayor says generically is when you're looking at your department, what can we do better? He wants to run the most efficient city he can. He wants to be fair to all the taxpayers of Milford, and that's his goal. So when he asks us to look at it, and this was done 5 years ago, every year when we sit down for budgets, he's like, okay, where can we stand? Where do we look at things? And this was one of the issues that we looked at that we thought was the right thing to do. And as I've explained, I think it's a fair cost passed on to the people that are generating that expense.
But this is a fee that will go to the general fund, not back to your department for certain needs or costs or expenses that you otherwise would not have been able to do. Is that right?
I'd let Peter answer that. I think that's incorrect. Wastewater is an island unto itself, so that money stays into the wastewater department for anything that they would need for improvements. Wastewater is a very expensive department to run continuously, 24/7, 365 days a year. Pumps, water treatments, everything that comes into play. So it stays in that department, but I would let Peter answer that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Alderman, yes, these fees do go into the general fund, if that was the question.
Through Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that response. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out then is the fee of $5 to $50 and $40 to $80. Just, there's no other reason for those fees other than to look at the town comparison and say Fairfield is X, Stratford is Y, therefore we should be what this is. That's what happened?
That would be correct. The superintendent looked at comparable towns and looked at best practices of other towns that were doing it, and we figured that that would be the appropriate raise, considering it hasn't been raised in a number of years.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Harlow.
Thank you. Just want to be clear on that's a commercial annual permit for haulers. It's not a residential fee. It's not anything else. It's only for the haulers that come in and pump septic systems. So they get a one-year, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong.
That is correct.
Okay. I just want to be clear that it's not something that gets passed on to the taxpayer or the resident. That's a hauler fee once a year for a permit to run his truck in the city of Milford.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Giannatasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Director Saley. To that point, Alderman Harla, the majority of the haulers that do haul are from out of town, because I only know of a few that are actually in Milford, but I see a lot of other trucks coming in and out of Milford hauling sewage, septic, that are out of town. Would you agree?
You know, I wouldn't want to answer that because honestly, I'm not 100% positive. But I think that what you're stating is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion?
Can the witness step down?
Excuse me? With no more discussion, will we put it to a vote? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Roll call vote. Madam Secretary, please.
Alderman Gaynor?
Yes.
Alderman Giannatasio?
Yes.
Alderman Grant? Oh, sorry. Alderman Hardeman? Alderman Harla? Alderman Parente? Alderman Frank Smith? Alderman Winthrop Smith?
No.
Alderman Sutton? Alderman Vitro?
Yes.
Alderman Vitale? Alderman Willis?
Yes.
Ten yeses, 1 no.
The vote was 10 yes and 1 no. The motion passes. Are there any other reports of standing committees? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 13. Are there any reports from any special committees? Alderman Vitale.
Just to let the board know that I attended the Board of Education meeting, and that first meeting was a very quick meeting. It was just an organizational meeting, and the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Vitale. Any other reports of standing committees? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 14, executive session. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss 14A, consideration of settlement of TKM Associates LLC versus City of Milford regarding 88 Noble Avenue, and 14B, consideration of settlement of Robert Sousa et al. Versus City of Milford regarding 105 Fifth Avenue. Joining us in executive session for 14A will be the Mayor, Glenn Blake, and City Attorney John Bertram. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're in executive session. We're back from executive session. Alderman Sutton.
Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize settlement in the matter of TKM Associates et al. Versus the City of Milford, Ray 88 Noble Avenue, in accordance with the recommendations of the City Attorney and City Assessor as discussed in executive session.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Sutton.
Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize settlement in the matter of Robert C. Souza et al. v. City of Milford, Ray 105 Fifth Avenue, in accordance with the recommendations of the City Attorney and City Assessor as discussed in executive session.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.